Sorry for that little depressing mood after the events of the last video, just because I still cannot stress the fact that how much I hate the hitbox in this game sometimes. But either way though, that's besides the point. Hey, what's up ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Sonic the Hedgehog here, and I'm Mighty the Armadillo here. We are back for yet again for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos once again. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Wario, Master of Disguise, aka in Japan, Phantom Thief, Warrior D7 for the Nintendo DS, for those of you who lived in Japan. So, yeah, last time we've actually completed episode 4, and now we're going to be moving on to episode 5. So in some cases though, we went through, in terms of level themes, we went through the ship level, and also we experienced the museum level, and also we experienced the Icicle Caverns level. But here we go into, I would say, a pyramid level. So, picking of, you know, Pharaoh's base or something. Well, then again though, despite the fact that I haven't exactly gone back into this game since 2 days ago, because let me tell you, it's just, I just want to get this game done and over with before we move on to Wario Shake It, or Wario Land Shake It, rather. So because of that though, I suppose I should probably also mention about this as well. Happy 10-year anniversary of the release of Paper Mario Sticker Star for the Nintendo 3DS. So honestly have no idea why I've actually explained about this from the start though, just because it's what to get that thing out of the way, because I know for the fact that a lot of people seem to really dislike that game so much, especially noticeable because, again, like we already mentioned about this several times already, that basically though, this was one of these considered this to be the black sheep in terms of the forms of the Paper Mario games for sure, alongside with Color Splash as well. But I will admit that right away, I honestly do prefer Color Splash alongside with the Origami King for a bit, because obviously with the humor and stuff, but honestly with Sticker Star in mind, that it just feels a little bit lacking with charm into the actual, like, not just by the forms of their world themes, but it's also with the lack of any humor or charm to it. So maybe I might have guessed it. So in this case though, yeah, that's as far as I can explain about this. And also, that today it is the Remembrance Day, as far as I'm aware. Oh, you mean like about the fact that we actually constantly saw those puppies all over the world for the sake of remembering anyone from the war? Yes, exactly, Mighty, especially noticeable about the fact that, well, it's always there for the sake of the forms of November, and on top of all that stuff though, we've only got about a week left until Pokemon Scarlet and Violet will be releasing on the Nintendo Switch. So, but God knows if we're able to actually decide to do some more uploading schedules on this, or perhaps even maybe something else for that matter, but we shall see what happens there. Especially noticeable because, well, like I said this before, I'm hoping we can able to get this game done before we move on to the next couple of Let's Plays. Well, it won't be that long now until specifically about the fact that, well, despite the fact that we've almost at the halfway point in terms of November already, for the sake of the forms of 2022 itself. And on top of all that stuff though, is the fact that, well, relatively speaking though, I think we're almost there to the forms of also in next week as well. That will also marks the 10th anniversary of the release of not only the Wii U, but also Nintendo Land, alongside with the forms of New Super Mario Bros. U. And I would also say Zombie U as well. And on top of all that stuff though, I think that's as far as I can able to try to describe about the forms of today's discussion. Well, apart from the fact that originally we were supposed to be able to mention something more related to ND World presentation, because it obviously did already happen ever since 2 days ago, but I think we should probably save that conversation until specifically next Monday, just because I just want to able to actually get these recording sessions you know, up and running, especially because, well, as far as I can usually tell about the fact that it's been a very long while since I actually done some of my commentary on Wario Master of Disguise, because, relatively speaking though, it's just the fact that, well, this particular year, to me though, it feels like a mixed bag already, so, but we'll save that conversation until whenever we get to the final Let's Play of 2022 itself. So for now, let's go get ourselves the next upgrade for, I would say, Genius Wario. So in this case though, well, nothing different from there, apart from the fact that, well, you can now attack with it. So that'll be super important, especially noticeable about the fact that you notice with certain cracked walls that we actually discover through ourselves. Basically, we can now able to actually use the boxing glove contraption, so that way you can able to actually punch those little cracked walls only if you're in Genius Wario. And speaking of Genius Wario though, basically every once in a while that you will able to see those little doors that is only accessible if you manage to able to turn it into Genius Wario, and that particular money bag over there is actually very impossible to get unless there is a specific transformation you can technically make trying to get, but that won't happen until by the end of the game. So yeah, brace yourselves for this point, mighty, because either way though, it's just the simple fact the matter is though, it's just the fact that, well, there's not much else I can honestly explain about this for the most part, so. But I digress. So, obviously today's date is, of course, the 11th of November today, in this case in 2022, and like we already mentioned about this several times already, that we almost at the halfway point in November this year. So, in some cases, though, is the fact that, I suppose I should probably also mention about this as well, we were also trying to mention something more related to Mario Kart Tour when it comes to the next tour coming up, but then again, much like the ND World announcements and stuff like that they actually announced so far, we'll save that conversation until whenever we get to the next video on this. So, despite the fact that I'm still not a big fan of this game, of course, because, you know, everything else about this game just feels a bit, well, it is playable, but it's just the fact that it just feels very clunky to control sometimes, even especially noticeable. Well, platforming itself is fine enough, but in terms of, like, you know, utilizing touchscreen controls all the time for, you know, transforming to several disguises and even special moves, or anything else to be more specific, it just feels kind of awkward to play sometimes, I will have to admit to that right away, but at the very least that's something. Oh yeah, I should also mention about this is the fact that depending on how much time you spend on specifically in any other levels for this game, you also get some cash, so that's something worth classifying for mentioning about that. And on top of all that stuff though, the more you collect more money, especially noticeable with treasures as well, oh yeah, treasures as well, that basically you can also manage to able to earn a lot of cash, and depending on how much cash you've got, similar to the forms of how it does it on Luigi's Mansion and stuff like that, basically you get yourselves a bit of a ranking system, which depending on how many money you get, basically though, it actually gives you a bit of a title of any sort, whenever you do somehow manage to able to grind more money, or treasures to be more specific, so yeah, it seems interesting to say the least, especially because, well, usually despite the fact that I don't usually remember this game all that much, because obviously it still is my least favorite Wario platformer games ever, well, I don't mind the Metroidvania exploration type of game, because it's actually interesting, but the only reason why it is my least favorite games of the forms of the Wario platformer games to begin with is probably because it has a lot of emphasis on touchscreen controls, and you have to use that all the time for, you know, mini games and all that stuff. And also, the pacing is a lot slower than the forms of how, well, let's just say, for example, in a much more better Metroidvania type of games, which is, of course, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, as well as the forms of the majority of the 2D Metroid games, they all, like, have a lot of exploration, like Metroidvania, and on top of all that stuff, though, every single aspect about those games are pretty fast and exhilarating. Whilst in here, the actual pacing is a lot slower, and even then, though, it might be seems a lot more dragged on than the forms of how it does it on any other Metroidvania type of games. In fact, gotta think about it, this game also kinda reminds me of Sonic Boom Shadow Crystal. Well, usually thankfully though, that you can able to actually control with the actual buttons themselves sometimes. But the only time exception though is utilizing with the actual slingshot whenever you move on to the next area to the next. Like you have to able to utilize the stylus in order to able to actually make your way to the next point. So, but that's besides the point right there. Although, if you really want to get these little trinkets when it comes to like the optional items for blueprints, or you still need able to actually go after all these specific items until you're able to progress through the game, because obviously you have to be able to get the insane amount of emblems in order to able to progress, which is kind of feels like a bit of a pace-breaking moment right there, which I'm still very appreciative about the fact that they did manage to fix that problem for the sake of the forms of Sonic Boom, Fire and Ice for the 3DS, so, but I digress. So yeah, let's talk about the forms of a different topic for this point today, and that is something to do with the fact that, well, it's about time that the Nintendo Switch sales records has been recently updated. And so far, anyway, not much else has been changed in terms of game selections they've got on the list, apart from the fact that the 9th and 10th place positions are actually a little bit different. Well, we'll explain more details on that in a moment. So in some cases though, that as you can see, we're now going to be able to explore through dark rooms, and in order to go through there, much like the museum level, is the fact that we have to use Spark Wario. Oh jeez, I almost messed that up. So because if I somehow mess that up, I will lose one of my icons on the top right corner on the bottom screen, so... But that's okay, because I'm usually more okay with the forms of dot-to-dot minigames. But however, I will admit though right away, my least favorite minigames in this entire game, straight off the bat, is to able to sort out the correct items in the correct spots. Because, well, I always keep on bumping into that minigame so many times on my own time, and that just gets a little bit repetitive in my eyes, because obviously about the fact that I just have no idea of what the heck I was expecting to go through, so... And by the way, since we've defeated those kinds of enemies, so that means we can now able to actually go ahead and obtain the purple chest, which I'm pretty sure it's mandatory if you really want to progress. So, and also in some cases though is the fact that I believe we do need to get those 2 key items in order to able to reach at the very end of the level. So as a result for that kind of stuff though, there's not much else I can explain about this. So, anyways, let's get to it with the games list, shall we? Obviously, not much has changed from, you know, number 1 to number 8, because obviously it remains the same. Like, obviously, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still on top, but this time it's now on to 48.41 million copies sold, as in the update it says, as of, at the end of September. So, yeah, pretty swell. Although especially noticeable that, just like in any other past years, much like the forms of how it does in the past years, I meant to say, Black Friday once again just somehow managed to able to include not only the Nintendo Switch itself, but also with a bundle with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as well. So, because trust me, there are so many numbers of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe right now. Although, to be fair though, because it actually did so well, because obviously now the DLC is now a thing, and on top of all that stuff though, everyone else are begging for, you know, some previous tracks will be returning for the past Mario Kart games. Yeah, I suppose that's true. Anyways, second place goes to Animal Crossing New Horizons still, and that game is now on to 40.17 million copies sold. So it's getting quite close, but nowhere near as close as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe though. And third place still goes to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but this time it's now on 29.53 million copies sold. So yeah, that should be pretty swell as far as this is concerned. And fourth place it still goes to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I could imagine about the fact that until in 2023 sometime, like possibly when it gets to the point until possibly in June next year, or September to be more specific, that I could imagine that Tears of the Kingdom might actually sell a lot more than the forms of the original game. We're not exactly sure about this just yet though, but we shall see until when the game finally comes out until 2023, so... Anyway, Pokemon Sword and Shield is still in 5th place position, so in some cases though, this time it's now on to 25 point... Actually, gotta think about it, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild sales records right now is actually 27.79 million copies sold, so yeah, that should be pretty cool as far as that's been concerned. And Pokemon Sword and Shield was now on 25.37 million copies sold, so not much else is different from there. Well, not long now until, you know, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet will be releasing, so... Oh, this minigame again! Because, not only because it's kind of tedious, but it's also very slow. like, you could imagine about the fact that you get time over very fast. Although, if you try to do this technique like I just did right there, then you probably do with it okay enough, I guess. So, excuse me, I've got something in my throat there, folks. I do apologize for that. 6th place still goes to Super Mario Odyssey, but this time that game is now sold for 24.40 million copies sold. And 7th place still goes to Super Mario Party. Like, as a result, that game is now on 18.35 million copies sold. So, and 8th place still goes to Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, which now that game is now in 14.92 million copies sold. However, like I mentioned this before, 9th place and 10th place are now slightly altered. So in some cases, for example, Ring Fit Adventure is now upgraded into 9th place position, and that game, as a result, is now on 14.87 million copies sold. And as far as 10th place is as far as I'm concerned, well, basically, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee editions are now on 14.81 million copies sold, and it's in 10th place position right now. Okay, that's a little bit of a difference when it comes to likely for certain games have been moved up and slightly moved down and stuff. Well, that's as far as I was thinking about that anyway. Next we have is the 11th place position, which at the moment is Pokemon Legends Arceus, and that game is now being sold for about 13.91 million copies sold, so it's actually getting pretty close to the, to the actual top 10, best-selling games list, as far as I'm aware. Nothing different from the likes of the 12th place position, I think so, which appears to be New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. It's still on 13.31 million copies sold, as in by the end of March in this year. And same applies to Splatoon 2, which Splatoon 2 was still on 13th place, as far as I'm aware, within 13.30 million copies sold, as in by the end of March in this year. And same applies to Luigi's Mansion 3, which as a result that game has been sold for about 11.43 million copies sold, as in by the end of March, and during the forms of this year in particular. And 15th place goes to Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury within 9.43 million copies sold by the end of by the end of March in this year, as far as that's been concerned. 16th place goes to Super Mario 3D All-Stars. Nothing changes for its sales numbers as of the forms of by the end of 2021. So in some cases though, it's still pretty much stuck on the forms of 9.07 million copies sold, despite the fact that, well, relatively speaking, despite the digital version is no longer continuing supporting, so as a result for that kind of stuff, though, there's honestly not much else I can honestly try to explain about this. And, also, Mario Party Superstars has finally managed to get itself this upgrade in terms of the sales numbers. So in some cases though, that game is now being sold for about 8.07 million copies sold, which is very impressive, especially because it actually did it so much better than the forms of how it does it on the top 100. So, at least specifically on the 3DS anyway. So, new games in the lineup though, in terms of their sales numbers, which we do have, both Splatoon 3 and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has now been added to the actual the Switch sales numbers. So anyway, but speaking of Splatoon 3, so far that game is now being sold for about 7.90 million copies sold, which is very impressive, especially because, well, for those of you who ever missed out on Splatoon 2 back in the day, well, kudos to you that you can now finally able to experience Splatoon 3. Well, usually I managed able to play the game by myself a little bit. Well, mind you, I will get back to it at some point, but it's just about the fact that I cannot stress enough about the fact that how much I do enjoy Sonic Frontiers on my own time. So in some cases though, the controls wise, one thing I should probably also mention about it is the fact that the controls in Sonic Frontiers might take a bit while to get used to, but when you get the hang of it though, it might not be too bad in my opinion. So well, despite the fact that the graphical standpoint is actually a lot different than the forms of how it does it on the PS4 version, alongside with the Xbox One versions here and there as well. So, I can imagine about the fact that, well, although the gameplay itself plays out exactly the same, so it's just with the forms of the different visual styles or something like that. Honestly, I've got no words to think about it, so... Anyway, 19th place goes to Super Mario Maker 2. Not much else different about the actual sales numbers, apart from the fact that it's on 7.89 million copies sold. And that's basically all there is to it, as of by the end of 2021. And as far as the 20th place, as far as this is concerned, Monster Hunter Rise is now on, well, it might be still on 7.70 million copies sold as of by the end of last year, so nothing different from Monster Hunter Rise. As far as Nintendo Switch Sports and Kirby and the Forgotten Land, as far as I'm aware, they've actually got themselves a bit of an update as well in terms of sales records. So, like, for instance, Nintendo Switch Sports is now officially now on to 6.15 million copies sold as of, well, 30th of September. So despite how most people seem to have a lot of mixed reactions of that game, because obviously with all that golfing sports we get out able to wait for a very long time, although I do know for one thing in mind that Mario Plus Rapid Sparks of Hope is not actually added yet, because obviously about the fact that they did record the actual sales records for the sake of the forms of September, but then whenever we get to like next year in February, then it will able to actually eventually add it in Mario Plus Rapid Sparks of Hope eventually, if they decided able to do the sales records for certain Nintendo Switch games by that time, until likely the updated version of, let's just say, by the end of 2022. So, I was thinking about that, because that game is now, I would say for about almost a month old. Well, despite the fact that we haven't exactly finished that game completely, because obviously we still get stuck on certain tough bosses, although we did somehow manage to make our way to the very end of the game, which is a huge plus because of the difficulty selections, so... or the difficulty settings, rather. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, for 22nd place position is still The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Remake, and as a result, that game has been sold for still 6.08 million copies sold as of by the end of 2021, so nothing different from there. For Kirby and the Forgotten Land, on the other hand, though, it's now been upgraded to 5.27 million copies sold as of by the end of September this year. So, yeah, massive improvement. And I will say, Kirby and the Forgotten Land is now the best-selling Kirby games of all time. So yeah, that's actually very impressive. Oh yeah, as far as Xenoblade Chronicles 3, they've somehow added in. Obviously, that game has now been sold for about 1.72 million copies sold, and that game is currently on 50th place. So, just above Miitopia, alongside with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, and also some other games here and there as well. Although I would like to able to mention more about the forms of the actual Switch sales for the sake of the forms of anything else for that resides, but unfortunately though, my phone's battery is almost dying, especially after playing not only Mario Kart Tour, but also recently we did manage to play Sonic Dash on our own time for a bit, because obviously the new event has been happening for the sake of the forms of Sonic Dash. And that's what appears to be the Super Sonic character, not the movie counterpart, because we already technically got that ever since and during the course of the previous updates of the game. Spoiler alert for those who have not seen the movie already, so I do apologize for that. So anyway though, yeah, Super Sonic is now going to be on Sonic Dash, specifically modern Super Sonic, because I get the strong sense of feeling that the reason why they might as well able to add that character because of the actual celebration of the release of Sonic Frontiers, because you know how the fact that in certain trailers and stuff like that, they obviously briefly show us Super Sonic in terms of like some Titan battles, but either way though, I'm pretty sure I'm almost done with the game already. Well, apart from the fact that it might actually took me about a lot longer than the forms of how it does it on any other Sonic games, which is actually a good thing, because unlike Sonic Forces, it only took you about roughly 4 hours, which is not very long in comparison to the forms of how it does it on any other Sonic games up to this point. Oh, there's nothing you need to worry about the forms of dying phone, Sonic. Oh, what makes you say that, Mighty? Because I somehow managed able to charge it up for you for our laptop. Okay, cheers, bro. Cheers. So, anyway, let's get back into the forms of the Switch sales numbers as far as this is concerned. For 24th place, was actually Mario Tennis Aces. So I think that game is pretty much unchanged when it comes to, like, sales numbers. So it's still on 4.28 million copies sold as of by the end of 2021. So, again, nothing different from there. For Clubhouse Games, 51 worldwide games, I'm pretty sure the actual sales numbers is basically unchanged as well. So I believe that game has been sold for about 4.22 million copies sold, and it was currently on 25th place. So, and 26th place is pretty much Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, basically. So in some cases though, it's the fact that that game is also unchanged for its sales numbers. So in some cases though, it was still in 4.12 million copies sold. So yeah, I guess there's not much else to explain about this. For 27th place, we have Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, still stuck in the 4 million copies sold as far as I'm aware, as of by the beginning of 2022. So, yeah, nothing different from there. For 28th place goes to Kirby Star Allies, which that game has been also unchanged when it comes to sales numbers, and that particular game is still sold for about 3.98 million copies sold as of by the end of last year. And for The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, somehow it's not changed for its sales numbers, but I do know for the fact that because it's been like quite a few months ago now since that game does exist on the Switch, but as a result though, it's still on 3.91 million copies sold as of by the end of March this year. So yeah, that's sure it's something. Just about a day before Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the movie in the UK release, exists, so but I digress. For 30th place goes to Fire Emblem Three Houses. Like, I'm pretty sure the sales records is also unchanged here and there. So in some cases though, it's still on 3.82 million copies sold. And yeah, as of by the end of last year, essentially. 31st place position goes to 1-2-Switch. In this case, the most laughable launch titles ever. So in some cases though, that game has been sold for about 3.63 million copies sold, which is not much in comparison to the superior launch title for the Switch, which appears to be, of course, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, because it's the most revolutionary Zelda games of all time. So yeah, everything else will come to expect, so but I digress. For 32nd place goes to Nanmanotoro. I can't pronounce that Japanese type of game like this. Yeah, that game has been sold for about still 3.50 million copies sold as of 22nd of March this year. So yeah, nothing different from now, I don't think. For 33rd place position, we have Paper Mario The Origami King, which is still on 3.34 million copies sold as of by the end of last year or something. And also, so far anyway, Minecraft is actually getting its upgrades a little bit for the sake of the forms of the sales numbers. So in some cases, that game has been sold for about 3.31 million copies sold as of since October the 22nd. So yeah, it's actually pretty swell, and especially noticeable because now with some new DLCs has now been officially exist for the sake of not only Sonic the Hedgehog ever since about a year ago, but also same applies with SpongeBob SquarePants DLC, alongside with any other things as well. So yeah, that's actually very impressive. For 35th place position is Among Us, and that game is, I would say it's unchanged for its sales numbers, like 3.20 million copies sold, which it was quite popular back in the day during the lockdown, but it has not been upgraded since then for its sales numbers, so I honestly have no idea what's happening to that game, potentially Sonic. Y'all know that, mighty. So, for 36th place position, it was Yoshi's Crafted World, still on 3.01 million copies sold as of by the end of last year. So that's something, I suppose. For 37th place goes to Metroid Dread, and apparently that particular game is unchanged for the sake of the forms of sales numbers. So apparently it's still stuck on 2.90 million copies sold, apparently. And for 38th place position goes to New Pokemon Snap, still stuck on, I would classify for saying still stuck on 2.74 million copies sold as of in the middle portion of May this year. So that's something, I guess. And for ARMS though, it was on 39th place, and I think that particular game has actually not been changed for its sales numbers. So in some cases though, it's still stuck on 2.66 million copies sold as of by the end of last year. The same applies to the forms of Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which apparently that game is now on 40th place. So as a result, it's now on 2.44 million copies sold, also by the end of last year for its record standpoint. For Mario Golf Super Rush though, it was actually on 2.35 million copies sold still. Especially noticeable, they actually last updated it ever since in at the end of March during this year. So yeah, nothing special about it. And as far as Pikmin 3 Deluxe is concerned, it was basically now on 42nd place position right now. So in some cases though, that game has been sold for about 2.23 million copies sold as of by the end of last year. And as far as Mario Strikers Battle League Football, it did upgrade for a little bit. So as a result though, they did manage to update it slightly. So in some cases though, Mario Strikers Battle League Football it's now been, you know, gone into 2.17 million copies sold. So, yeah, not much else explanation about that. Especially now that there are some more DLCs coming up. But now we need to wait for the third and the final wave for that game's completion. So as a result, let's just bet on Bowser Jr. and PD Piranha for the better. Because obviously we'll get the rest of the Mario Strikers Charge Football selections of characters. But if not, then it might as well be someone else, so, but we shall see. Anyway, for 44th place position goes to Octopath Traveler, still on 2.16 million copies sold, as in the beginning of this year. And 45th place position still goes to Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, still on 2.13 million copies sold as of by the end of last year. And also Dragon Ball FighterZ is still on 2.01 million copies sold as of by the end of last year. It was on 46th place position. 47th place position, it was Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, still stuck in 2 million copies sold, but I can imagine about the fact that Sparks of Hope will actually sell a lot better. But either way though, we shall see what happens in due time. And between Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Rescue Team DX, alongside with Toku Non Johnson Jan Drumming Fun, both of those games are tied for 48th place within 1.89 million copies sold as of by the forms of by the end of last year. So and as far as the new game that's been added, like I mentioned this before, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was actually currently in 50th place within 1.72 million copies sold as of by the end of September. So it's doing pretty well though, from what I've heard. Anyway, between Miitopia alongside with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, both games are tied for 51st place within 1.68 million copies sold. I don't think that Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition doesn't usually get updated or Miitopia ever since then. So as a result of that kind of stuff though, I think that's as far as I can think about it. So, but geez, there are so many games I would like to discuss upon, but honestly guys, I think we should probably save that conversation into a later time. But at the very least though, the Nintendo Switch itself is actually doing super well again. So as a result, it did manage to able to update the actual sales numbers for the actual how much units they sold. So, but I'll get more on that in a moment. So in some cases though, here we go with the next boss in this game, which appears to be like a, I'm not exactly sure what this guy was name was though. Although we'll probably try to able to search it up actually, before we able to actually just somehow almost got distracted by the forms of not knowing what to do here for a second ago. But regardless of such though, we have to use Disguise Wario in order to able to deal the damage, or just stun him for that matter. And then every once in a while we have to transform into dragon form, so that way it deals the damage into its head, apparently. Don't ask me why. Oh yeah, this guy's name is Pooh the Pharaoh. So in some cases though, it's the fact that, well, I've got no words to explain about this guy. So anyway, so yeah, let's talk about the forms of the Nintendo Switch units sold so far. As far as I'm aware, that particular system is now being sold for about I can't remember. Do you remember, Mighty? Oh, I think I found the actual solution there, Sonic. Oh yeah, the Nintendo Switch is now being sold for about 114.33 million units sold, as in by the end of September. And I do apologize for knocking the microphone there, because, well, I honestly wasn't paying attention, so but I digress. So let's go ahead and deal with this last damage on this guy. And there we go, we basically complete, well, episode 5. Honestly, episode 5 is nowhere near as bad as the forms of how it does it on the other 2 levels, that's for sure. Especially noticeable about the fact that, well, thankfully, this level is actually, well, despite it's a bit tricky, but regardless of such though, the good thing about this is though now, is the fact that we can able to actually replenish our health for the sake of the forms of, thanks to the forms of that particular RT Warrior upgrade. So, that should be pretty swell. Yeah, especially noticeable, we don't able to get ourselves a, well, another death again after the events of the 4th boss in the game. Yeah, I know, especially for that gosh darn hitbox just won't let me work half the time. Oh well, but at least we get sucked up anyway for some reason. And I think I get the strong sense of feeling that I'm pursuing to you. We're actually on the halfway point of the game right now. So we've done 5 chapters so far, or 5 episodes to be more specific. And once again, that he fails to able to actually just to get there in time, because obviously that he somehow feels a bit slightly slower. Although Wario did manage to make it there first before you do, though, right there. So, yeah, I think that's as far as I can usually try to explain about this for the most part right here. In fact, I'm actually feeling a little bit better for this point today, in terms of moodiness about this game so far. Well, mind you, there might be still some bit of issues here and there, which we'll probably get into more details about that until what if we get to the next couple of levels, so... Because my god, though, we've almost done, folks, we've almost done! I couldn't imagine about the fact that I was trying to able to have some bit of struggles here and there, but as a result, there's not much else I can explain about this, I guess. Perhaps. Yes, perhaps. Yeah, you get the idea about that. Alright, so how much minutes I've spent on in this level? 27 minutes, so it's nowhere near as long as the other 2 levels, but oh my goodness. I will say though, that wasn't as big of a pain in the backside as the forms of other 2 level 1 was, because... well, I've got nothing else to add, so... but at the very least we got certain treasures though. Although, we haven't exactly got all the treasures, mind you, because there are some rooms I somewhat missed. But either way though, we shall see what happens in due time, so... So anyways though, I think we're almost done with the forms of certain treasures as far as I'm aware. Well, mind you about the fact that, well, again, it's been a very long time since I actually did somehow manage to able to remember this game as much, but either way though, that's the point, so... anyways, so... but at the very least, we actually did done a lot of talking for the sake of the forms of, you know, the... how much games they sold so far, for its updates and everything, for its sales numbers, so... pretty impressive, I might add. Yeah, tell me about it, especially notable because, well, relatively speaking though, that, well, we just weren't able to actually get certain stimulations going for, well, if there aren't any, bare bones stuff we can mention about, then I've got no words to say about this, I guess. So yeah, it looks like certain bars has now been added to our photo album and stuff. But hey, later it's something, I guess. So, with that being said though, we'll get the endings of this point right here, folks. So join us next time for more of Let's Play of Wario, Master of the Skies. Instead, we'll move on to the next episode, which appears to be episode 6. So I'll see you guys until on Monday. Later, dudes. See you guys then.